as Piers just mentioned, there are the people who are multi-skilled, and then there are the people who work with people from various disciplines in one team, which is another way of doing it, and that is the way we are doing it. I founded 5 years ago a company called Troya with two founding partners, Troya and Sebastian Noel. And we mix in our work mainly graphic design, product design, engineering. Our work is mainly at the intersection of art design and technology. So this is a brief overview of the project I'm going to talk about today, which show, I think, a range of varying disciplines in each one of them. The first project, very early on, was the SMS Go Projector, which is a mobile projector which has an incorporated mobile phone in its handle. And that enables you to project text messages in public spaces, so on street signs and on houses, inside houses. It was mainly developed as a reaction to sort of ubiquitous advertising messages, which hit you every day. And that's why we've been very reluctant to sort of sell soap with it, although we had plenty of offers from advertising agencies. But there was one nice opportunity which came up, and that was when Warner Music approached us, and so we did some projections for the streets in the Astoria a couple of years ago. We thought that was quite nice because we felt that the values of the item we had created somehow mirrored the values they were portraying.
Hello everybody, I am the true or the armchair activist.
That's somehow the follow-up project of the SMS Go Projector. It's a tool for armchair activists, which is in a way the sonic version. What it does is you can text your messages and rants to this little machine, and it then speaks it out aloud. It was initially developed when the sort of ban against protesting in front of the Houses of Parliament came out. And we also heard about this term, tool for armchair activist. Or actually, we heard about the term armchair activist, and we thought it was sort of, it had a story to it. We were imagining this guy who was sitting at home, moaning about politics, having an opinion about everything, but never actually voicing it. So we were wondering how a tool for that person would look like. So this is what we built. It was quite interesting to see the reaction we got on the internet, because people weren't quite sure if we meant it or not. Was our opinion then really that people shouldn't bother protesting or not engage? Where was the line between protesting if you weren't there? And there were quite a lot of interesting discussions we started on the internet. Then went on to create a campaign around that object for the MTV Awards. So we installed it in Copenhagen during the awards, and got people to text their opinion about the awards to it. So it could speak two different languages, Danish and English. And it was really interesting to see the kind of responses we got, because people started to imagine how this object would work. Some were envisaging this little story that a little girl would sit in a box and she had to speak out all the messages. Then also to see how people were reappropriating the object for their own purposes. There was, for example, a guy who was selling sausages on the square, and he, quickly found out that he could basically use this object to his own ends. A couple of years later, a project for Terminal 5, which we installed last March. This is also a mix of art, technology, and design. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about the way how this was actually built and created and the process behind it. British Airways commissioned us to develop an art wall for their entrance hall in the new Terminal 5 lounges. And what we developed for them was this world clock, which extends the common notion of your normal world clock. So what we integrated were places like the Great Barrier Reefs, like natural wonders, the museum around the world instead of the capitals. The idea behind that was that if you start traveling and you go places in your head, maybe it's worthwhile to think about other places than just the obvious ones to go to. We didn't actually only develop the concept and design for that, but we also developed the display system, which you see. The display system uses electroluminescent technology, and we have developed segmented typeface for it to work with. So if you, what you will see now is that it is animated in a handwritten fashion. So we thought it was quite nice to take a sort of display technological typeface, but then give a more human touch to it. So each letter can be animated by switching the different segments on. And the lines you see on the top, they're actually the tracks which bring the current to the ink in order for it to lighten up. So we sort of started looking at very old displays, and then we wanted to see how far we could push it to create a more refined display. So what we then created was this font, and this is a cell you can see. The interesting thing about the cell is that you can actually display 4 different fonts. So here you have the sort of handwritten font, and then here you have the big capital font. You can also display like small caps, which are basic capitals on the size of a common letter. This is a setup. Basically what you see here is this transparent acetate on which the ink is printed. And if certain segments are subject to electric currents, they will light up. So what you see here are all the lines which go down there. We didn't have to light the lines, but we thought it was a really nice way to animate the whole wall a little bit more than just the row of letters. So you can see the handwritten font. And these are the caps, which is quite interesting because I don't think there are an awful lot of typefaces which work, or displays which work on this scale and this lightness, and it's actually quite energy efficient. I mean, these prints can be, the big locks you saw, they are like 2 meters by 1 meter, and they're incredibly light because in essence it's just a sheet of acetate with silk screen print on it. Here you can see the acetate, and it's basically a bendable sheet. So that's silk screen printing thing in the factory. This is where the prints are actually coming out of the machine. We also got a second commission from Terminal 5. For the atrium space, which is a space where you enter when you go up to the luxury lounges. And so we developed this concept about a cloud because we compared this transition space to the moment where you sort of take off and you break through that layer of clouds, because there you basically go up from the busy shopping mall downstairs and you go up the escalators into the lounges, which are supposed to be more peaceful and quiet. So we thought the cloud would be a really nice thing. And the nice thing is as well that people sort of come from downstairs, they see it, they can't quite work out what it is. And as they come closer with the escalator, they come roughly 1.5 meters distance, they can actually see what's happening on this. So the nice thing is that these are all kinetic components, like little flip dots which flip from mirror to black. So it's not just like an on and off sort of LCD screen in 3-dimensional format, but it's actually really a kinetic sculpture. This was what we were inspired by. So it's old flip dot technology, which you have on the front of buses, or also these sort of boards you have in old train stations, and they flick when they change the destination. So we thought, like for an airport, it would be quite nice because this immediately evokes a notion and a bit of nostalgia of travel, when travel was still like something really special. And this is the way we customized them. So they're a slightly different kind of flip dot, and we decided to mirror one side to take it a little bit into the 21st century. That was our first sketch, which in effect is actually sort of quite close, but then we realized that it was actually very difficult to tile an irregular object because you don't have like a 90-degree grid, but all the dots are asymmetrically arranged. Another challenge was how to actually build an object like that, which should be light and cost efficient. And the way we ended up doing it is using a technique which was used in the past a lot for building boats. So basically, this whole sculpture is built out of 2D strips, which are tack welded onto a structure, which you can see here. So there's again sort of a transmission between 2D and 3D, which is going on. That is our curator, who we basically have to thank this project to, because admittedly she was a very brave woman, or she simply didn't know what she signed up to when she commissioned this project, which is why we built a prototype to sort of test the whole system. Yes, Susie. And went on from there. But it was a great moment in time and a great relief for us. The cloud is basically built in two parts, top and bottom, which are welded. You can see the holes there. These are the holes where all the sort of cables come out and the flip dots go in, because each flip dot has to be addressed separately, otherwise you can't animate them. So this is inside, a couple of cables. As you can see in distribution boards, there were a lot of little innovations which we sort of needed to make along the way. Part of it was, for example, the refresh rate of the flip dots, because you can imagine that on a board where you have typography which changes every now and again, sort of real-time animation isn't really an issue, or was never part of the plan when one developed the flip dots. These are the cable onto which the flip dot then get connected. And I think these are the people who helped us assemble it. It was an art fabricator, Mike Smith, and they are, I think they're getting slightly crazy, because they're basically 5,000 flip dots, and they have to number each one according to like a manual which we produced for them. This was an incredible job. If you then think back to the animation, it's actually also quite interesting how you need to imagine an animation on a three-dimensional irregular shape. Because basically what you have to do is, in a sense, the revert process, and how we build it with 2D strips, you again have to fold a map out and then try to understand how the animations from this map translate back to the three-dimensional object. Now, when we built the thing, we needed to develop the animations in parallel, because after the build was finished, we had another 3 days, and then we actually needed to install it. So what we did in the meantime is we built a simulation program in processing, where we could sort of prototype the animation and get a good impression how they would actually look on the final sculpture. Yeah. This was the night of the installation, which was actually also quite interesting, because Terminal 5 had been built entirely, and there were obviously, the sculpture is about 2 by 5.5 meter long, so there was obviously no door which we could sort of bring it through. So what we needed to do instead is we needed to suspend it and carry it all the way through, fly it over 2 different balconies into the atrium.
So excited about the artist installation out in the atrium, which is the floating cloud, which has been done for us by Troya. I just can't wait to see people's faces when they see it with the movement.
What we're looking at here is the lower half of the cloud. It's welded aluminium structure that's covered in about 4,500 electronically controlled discs that just silver to black.
After 9 months, we're actually going to see tonight the launching of the cloud. Now this is actually going to be flown in right across from the car park, right through over the atrium areas, up over balconies, at least 2 balconies, we're going to come and land on the balcony, and then it's going to be suspended mid-air over the atrium, over the escalator.
There's a clear brief from British Airways to put something into the atrium, and they wanted something that would attract people, like mark the entrance of the lounge. It was like an interesting metaphor for us to work on. Was, like when we pick up, and suddenly like it's very bright.
Spare you some of that, but what's quite interesting is the point where we really are lowering it into the atrium. We built this massive cradle, top and bottom. To transport it, we need to do the same, because obviously it's like sort of all around covered in flip dots, so there's no way you can actually place it on the ground. It was really nice to actually see the reaction of the builders and the people who worked in the terminal, because they were first very sort of suspicious. Oh, and it's odd, and then no, and so what is it actually? But like once we had installed it and started running it, they were the first one to get sort of their mobile phones out and send pictures to their like wives and kids. So that was actually very nice for us to see. Okay, this is a little bit about inspirations, about the mix, because what we often do, we take technology or software, but we'll very often try to make the link with sort of real, actual life. So this is just a slide which illustrates that thought process. So there are so many things and processes we have gotten used to, but what would actually happen if we transfer them one-to-one into real life, and would our life be actually still possible in the same way? Another bit we are inspired by are sort of accidents of technology. I think it's really charming, and also with these things you realize that it's actually all around you, also in pieces where you actually don't expect it. For example, in your cash machine that is running Windows, which is sort of a worrying thought. That was the inspiration for us to create an art virus. So we created the Newton virus, and the idea behind the Newton virus was that we wanted to introduce something real, like gravity, into something virtual, like your desktop. So what it does, it affects the icons on your desktop, but also if you sort of tilt it, it sort of falls again towards the center of gravity of the Earth. So it's a little film shows you that. So we're currently developing that as a screensaver and also as sort of a downloadable software version, and we'll be finished with that in the next couple of weeks. But the idea was just to really do something really surprising in a space where you were not sort of used to this kind of intrusions. Yeah. And the very last project is sort of another border crossing exercise, I guess. I think if you're a graphic designer, often the question is if you are also an author, especially if you work in the area of editorial and books or magazines. And we do a lot of graphic design work, especially for cultural clients, which I haven't shown here, like for the Science Museum, for example. So we got the chance to make a book with Thames and Hudson, who asked us if we would like to submit a proposal. So wondering what that could be, and we decided to sort of put all our strengths in one pot and make a book about art design and technology. That's a survey and has 4 different chapters. First is called Design Nouveau, where we look at a lot of pieces which sort of enhance design, sort of chandeliers which you can text to. This is a project by Simon Haydens with these lamps which actually are connected to a sensor which senses wind outside. So if it's windy outside, the lamps sort of start to move. Then the second one is augmented art, where we're really looking at fine artists using technology, which is it's often a slightly different approach, because they're really using it often as a raw material to only maybe push their concept out in the strongest way possible. And Guerrilla Artware looks at a lot of people who are sort of hacking into objects, like for example the SMS projector is in that range. See? And Twilight technology is a bit more related to critical design, people who question through their projects and products, input of technology in everyday life. Yeah, we built a little installation for the cover as well and made a typeface for it. And yeah, that's it. I think that gives a pretty good overview of what we do.